Windows 1.0. Microsoft launched Windows 1.0 in 1985. Their first graphical interface meant to make computers look less like alien command terminals. Before this, users had to type everything manually in Microsoft Disk operating system. Every command, every program, every folder. Windows 1.0 layered a visual interface on top of that, turning text commands into clickable icons. Programs like Paint, Calculator, and the classic Reversey game were included, because clearly Microsoft wanted to prove computers could be both useful and a little boring. The windows on screen were stuck in a tiled layout, meaning they could not overlap. If you wanted multitasking, you got multi-glancing. There were no minimize or maximize buttons either, just windows politely sitting side by side like children told not to touch each other. To make things even more exciting, Windows 1.0 relied on a mouse, an exotic gadget most users had never even seen. Many early adopters wondered why they suddenly needed a strange plastic box to move a little arrow on the screen. Windows 1.0 was simple but unstable. Blue screens appeared like random acts of performance art, and the system produced strange beeps whenever it felt overwhelmed, which was often. Still, it marked the beginning of a new era, where computing slowly transitioned from cryptic commands to visual simplicity. Windows 2.0. 2 years later, Microsoft returned with Windows 2.0, which finally allowed windows to overlap. This small change felt revolutionary. It meant you could actually stack applications like a messy desk, instead of keeping them in a perfect grid. Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel made their Windows debut here, turning office computers into slightly more productive typewriters. Of course, Apple immediately accused Microsoft of copying its overlapping window design. The lawsuit dragged on, but Microsoft argued that Apple had previously invited them to develop software for the Macintosh, and therefore the similarities were inevitable. The judge agreed, letting Microsoft keep its new design, and effectively giving them permission to dominate the personal computer interface for decades to come. Windows 2.0 also supported a massive leap to 256 colors on screen. That might not sound like much now, but at the time it was like going from a black and white TV to Technicolor. Windows 3.0 and 3.1. Windows 3.0 was when the software finally started looking like Windows. It ran faster, supported the new Intel 386 processors, and introduced proper icons for programs. You could finally multitask without your computer threatening to collapse. Microsoft spent millions promoting it, and it worked. Suddenly, Windows wasn't just for geeks, it was for everyone. 2 years later, Windows 3.1 arrived, introducing drag and drop functionality and TrueType fonts, meaning what you saw on screen was actually what printed on paper. It also shipped with games like Solitaire and Minesweeper, which secretly taught an entire generation how to use a mouse. Windows 3.11 for workgroups followed soon after, adding network capabilities. Now offices could connect computers together, a terrifying concept at the time, since it meant Jerry from accounting could now access your shared folder by accident. Windows NT 3.1 to 3.51. While home users were busy playing Solitaire, Microsoft's engineers were secretly building a completely new foundation. Windows NT. Unlike the consumer versions that sat on top of Microsoft Disk operating system, Windows NT used a brand new kernel. This made it more stable, more secure, and less likely to faint during heavy workloads. NT 3.1 came in 1993, followed by NT 3.5 and 3.51, which improved networking and hardware support. These early NT systems were aimed at businesses, not home users. They were serious, complicated, and about as fun to install as a tax return, but they laid the groundwork for all modern versions of Windows that followed. Windows 95? Windows 95 changed everything. It was the first version that felt like a complete modern operating system, rather than a fancy shell. It introduced the Start menu, Taskbar, and plug-and-play hardware support, features we still use today. For the first time, people could plug in a printer and have it just work, instead of spending an afternoon installing mysterious floppy disks. Windows 95 also shipped with Internet Explorer, which meant many users' first experience of the internet began with the sound of a dial-up modem and a crash. Despite the glitches, it was an enormous success. Microsoft spent more on marketing Windows 95 than Hollywood blockbusters of the same year, and it paid off. PCs became a household staple, and Microsoft became a tech giant. Windows 98 and 98 Second Edition. Windows 98 refined what Windows 95 started. It added better Internet Explorer integration, proper USB support, and even dual monitor capability. Perfect for anyone who thought one headache-inducing CRT screen wasn't enough. But it was also notoriously buggy. During a live demo, demo, Bill Gates proudly tried to show off plug and play and got a blue screen of death on stage. The audience laughed. Gates did not. Microsoft rushed out Windows 98 Second Edition in 1999, which fixed many issues and improved internet connection sharing. Windows 2000 and Windows Millennium Edition. Windows 2000 was built on the reliable Windows NT core and aimed at business users. It was stable, secure, well, mostly, and marked the beginning of Windows feeling professional. Then came Windows Millennium Edition, or Windows ME, and everything fell apart. ME tried to combine consumer-friendly features with modern stability, but ended up being unstable, slow, and cursed. It introduced System Restore, a genuinely helpful feature that lets you roll back your computer to an earlier point in time. But half the time even that crashed. People quickly renamed it Mistake Edition. Windows XP. After the disaster that was Millennium Edition, Microsoft regrouped and released Windows XP in 2001. It merged the reliability of the Windows NT family with the user-friendliness of consumer Windows. The result was so good, it became one of the most beloved operating systems ever made. The interface was smoother, colorful, and, by early 2000 standards, beautiful. It introduced the now iconic blue and green Luna theme, faster startup, and far better hardware detection. Plug in a device, and it usually just worked. A small miracle after years of driver drama. XP also introduced built-in CD burning, so you could finally make your own music discs without installing shady third-party software that came with a side of malware. Windows XP came in home, professional, and even 64-bit editions, along with a slimmed-down version for older systems. Under the hood, it ran on the powerful New Technology File System, or NTFS, which supported larger hard drives and stronger file security. But XP wasn't perfect. It introduced product activation, Microsoft's way of fighting piracy, something that many users found almost as annoying as the viruses it was supposed to prevent. Even so, Windows XP remained the standard for years. When Vista arrived, most users simply refused to upgrade, clinging to XP like a comfortable old hoodie. Windows Vista. After 6 years, Microsoft released Windows Vista, a flashy, overconfident operating system that promised to be the future. It introduced the Aero interface with transparent windows, smooth animations, and that fancy 3D task switcher. It also came with user account control, a new security feature that asked for your permission every 5 seconds, because apparently, Microsoft thought its users were reckless children. Vista had the right ideas, but poor timing. Its new look demanded powerful hardware, which most people's computers didn't have. The result? Sluggish performance, constant lag, and fans spinning like jet engines. Hardware makers hadn't updated their drivers yet, so printers, sound cards, and even graphics chips often refused to cooperate. Add to that aggressive digital rights management systems that slowed everything down, and Vista's reputation was doomed. Many called it the new Millennium Edition, but in hindsight, Vista was more like a public beta test. It laid the groundwork for the excellent version that came next. Windows 7. Windows 7 arrived 2 years later and immediately redeemed Microsoft's reputation. It looked similar to Vista, but fixed nearly everything that was wrong with it. It kept the attractive Aero interface, but ran faster and smoother. Hardware compatibility was vastly improved, and for once, upgrades didn't feel like punishment. Windows 7 introduced features like Snap. Drag a window to the side of the screen, and it automatically resizes to half. This made multitasking much easier, especially for comparing files or working on 2 documents side by side. The improved search bar inside the Start menu became an instant hit. You could type a few letters, and it would find anything from apps to documents. It was stable, elegant, and reliable. No surprise it became one of the most popular Windows versions in history. In fact, it was so good that users ignored the next version entirely for years. Microsoft ended official support in 2020, yet Windows 7 machines still linger in offices and old laptops everywhere, because if it isn't broken, don't update it. Windows 8 and 8.1. Then Microsoft decided to get innovative again. In 2012, it released Windows 8, an operating system that was technically solid but visually confusing. The company was obsessed with tablets at the time and designed Windows 8 around touchscreens. The classic Start menu vanished, replaced by a full-screen start screen filled with live tiles, showing weather, news, and other distractions nobody asked for. For desktop users with a mouse and keyboard, it felt like waking up in an alternate universe. Everything required swiping, tapping, and scrolling horizontally like it was 2012's answer to a fever dream. Critics didn't hold back, and users revolted so loudly that Microsoft backtracked a year later with Windows 8.1. Windows 8.1 restored the Start button, added better desktop integration, and tried to pretend the previous mess never happened. It also introduced support for new tech like Miracast wireless displays and even 3D printers, which sounded futuristic in 2013. Still, most people stayed far away, clinging to Windows 7 like it was a life raft. Windows 10. In 2015, Microsoft launched Windows 10 and promised it would be the last version of Windows. The idea was simple. Instead of releasing entirely new versions, they'd just update it forever. That promise didn't age well, but at the time it made sense. Windows 10 combined the familiarity of Windows 7 with some of the modern design elements of Windows 8. It brought back the Start menu, this time with a small panel of live tiles to appease the few who liked them, and introduced features like Task View and virtual desktops, allowing users to organize multiple workspaces. It was designed to run on everything from tablets to desktops, and overall, it worked well. But Windows 10 had one major personality flaw. It loved to update itself. Random restarts, endless loading screens, and progress bars stuck at 99% became common memes. Users often found their computers rebooted overnight, mid-project, all for your security. Despite that, Windows 10 became one of the most widely adopted systems ever, praised for its performance, versatility, and support for DirectX 12 gaming. Windows 11? Then came Windows 11 in 2021, which Microsoft swore wasn't supposed to exist until it did. It introduced a cleaner, softer look with rounded corners and a centered Start menu. The design clearly borrowed ideas from macOS, probably to look more modern. Windows 11 improved multitasking with snap layouts, showing layout options when hovering over the Maximize button. It also added tabbed browsing inside File Explorer, finally catching up to something users had been asking for since the 2000s. Underneath, it was essentially Windows 10 in new clothes, with slightly stricter hardware requirements that left many older PCs behind. Windows 11 runs faster, looks better, and feels more cohesive, but functionally, there's nothing radically new. As of 2025, Windows 10 still holds the majority share of active PCs, Windows Server, and embedded versions. While home and office computers got all the attention, Microsoft quietly built an entire parallel family of Windows versions for businesses and machines that never sit at a desk. These are the Windows Server and Windows Embedded editions, designed for data centers, cash registers, factory robots, and anything else that doesn't need solitaire. The first major step came with Windows NT Server, launched alongside the desktop NT line in the early 1990s. It was engineered for networks, file sharing, printers, user accounts, and all the stuff your office IT guy swears is very complicated. NT Server gave businesses stability and security that the home versions sorely lacked. Over time, it evolved into Windows 2000 Server, then Windows Server 2003, each improving on scalability, memory handling, and the ability to juggle hundreds of users at once without imploding. By Windows Server 2008, Microsoft had fully aligned the interface and features with consumer Windows Vista and later Windows 7, but underneath it was a completely different animal, optimized for uptime and control. Features like Hyper-V virtualization let one physical machine run multiple virtual servers, a huge deal for data centers trying to save space and power. Later versions such as Windows Server 2012, 2016, 2019, and now Server 2022 followed the same evolution cycle. Take the consumer version, strip out the entertainment fluff, crank up the stability, and give administrators more control than any normal human should have. These servers quietly power most corporate networks, websites, and cloud services on the planet, doing their jobs 24/7 without anyone ever seeing their desktop. Then there are the embedded and Internet of Things editions of Windows, specialized variants designed for devices that are technically computers but don't look like them. Think of Windows Embedded POS, ready for point-of-sale systems, Windows Embedded Compact for handheld scanners, and more recently, Windows IoT Core, which runs on everything from smart fridges to industrial sensors. Most of these versions are stripped down, minimal, and built to run for years without updates or user input. They may not get the headlines, but these industrial flavors of Windows are everywhere, inside elevators, airport kiosks, medical machines, and ATMs. So when your cash dispenser freezes and displays a Windows update screen, that's not a glitch in the Matrix. It's literally Windows taking a coffee break. There's a great video on the screen now. Don't miss it, okay?